When most equipment dealers chased newer machines with bigger margins, one man in rural Indiana looked in the opposite direction. He wasn't searching for the next big thing. He was searching for what everyone else had already given up on. Across the United States, the heavy equipment industry increasingly revolved around sprawling dealership networks representing giants like Caterpillar, John Deere, Komatsu, and Case. Success often meant selling the latest models backed by financing packages, warranties, and dealer service contracts. But tucked away in southern Indiana, far from corporate headquarters and billion-dollar manufacturers, Clinton Chitwood was quietly building a business based on a completely different idea. His company, CNC Equipment, made one crazy decision, and it changed heavy equipment forever. It all started long before CNC equipment even existed. The machines nobody else wanted growing up in Monroe County, Indiana, on farmland that had remained in his family for generations. He was surrounded by excavators, bulldozers, and tractors from an early age. His father worked in the excavating business, meaning heavy equipment was part of everyday life. Machines weren't disposable objects to be traded in every few years. They were tools that earned their value through hard work, careful maintenance, and the willingness of someone to keep them running. It was an old-school mindset that would eventually put him at odds with many of the trends transforming the equipment industry. In 2004, Clinton founded CNC Equipment with little fanfare. There were no outside investors, no venture capital, and no ambitious plan to build a national dealership empire. The operation started much like countless independent equipment businesses across rural America, buying used construction equipment, repairing what needed attention, and reselling it to contractors, farmers, and local businesses. On paper, there was nothing particularly remarkable about it. Hundreds of similar yards operated throughout the Midwest. Had events unfolded differently, CNC might have remained just another regional dealer known only to nearby customers. Then came a decision. Many in the industry would have considered it a gamble. Around 2008, Clinton began purchasing decommissioned military surplus vehicles. These weren't ordinary used trucks traded in by construction companies. They were former United States military vehicles that had spent years, sometimes decades, supporting Army, Marine Corps, or National Guard operations before being declared surplus. Under the Department of Defense's disposal system, equipment that was no longer needed first became available to other federal agencies, then state and local governments, and finally, if no public agency claimed it, entered public auctions through government surplus programs. By the time many of these machines reached civilian buyers, they carried thousands of miles, years of service, and maintenance histories that could either be meticulously documented or frustratingly incomplete. The inventory itself was remarkably diverse. One auction might feature the legendary M35 Deuce-and-a-half, a 2.5-ton 6x6 cargo truck that entered American military service during the early 1950s and earned a reputation for operating almost anywhere. Another could include the larger 5-ton M800 or M900 series trucks, military Humvees introduced during the 1980s, engineering equipment, trailers, generators, forklifts, or specialized recovery vehicles. Some had never left the United States, spending their careers on domestic bases or National Guard installations. Others had supported overseas operations before returning home. Their ages varied enormously. It wasn't unusual for vehicles built decades earlier to remain in service because the military maintained them on strict preventive maintenance schedules rather than replacing them according to age alone. That created an unusual contradiction. Many surplus vehicles looked rough after years of military use, but beneath faded paint and worn interiors often sat drivetrains designed for extraordinary durability. Military specifications demanded equipment capable of operating in deserts, mountains, freezing temperatures, deep mud, and environments where breakdowns could cost lives rather than simply delay a job. Most were engineered with heavy-duty frames, simple mechanical systems, generous ground clearance, and interchangeable parts intended to keep them operating under extreme conditions. Yet those same characteristics also limited their appeal. They were slower than commercial trucks, less comfortable, often required specialized knowledge, and many were never designed with civilian highway driving in mind. Clinton saw an opportunity here when no one else did. He recognized that with the right mechanical knowledge, fabrication skills, and patience, these overlooked machines could be transformed into reliable civilian workhorses. Their rugged construction meant they could often continue operating in remote locations where modern computerized equipment might be difficult or impossible to repair. Instead of selling the trucks exactly as they arrived from government auctions, CNC began rebuilding and customizing them. Crew cab conversions, upgraded suspensions, custom fabrication, steering modifications, and carefully restored mechanical systems transformed former military vehicles into practical machines for construction companies, ranches, emergency services, and buyers in remote regions around the world. Much of the fabrication was completed in-house, allowing Clinton to solve problems that couldn't be fixed by ordering a catalog part. Every successful build strengthened CNC's reputation as a company willing to tackle projects others considered too complicated. Looking back, it's tempting to assume the opportunity was obvious. It wasn't. The broader heavy equipment market was steadily moving toward newer machines packed with electronics, emissions controls, and proprietary diagnostic software. Large manufacturers invested billions in innovation, while independent dealers increasingly focused on late-model inventory, supported by financing and warranty programs. Clinton instead doubled down on machines many people viewed as obsolete. Whether by instinct or experience, he recognized something others had overlooked. For many customers, especially those working far from dealership networks or sophisticated repair shops, simplicity could be more valuable than cutting-edge technology. This would become the foundation of everything CNC equipment built. The dealer who told customers what not to buy. Most salesmen make money convincing you to buy. Clinton Chitwood built a reputation telling people when to walk away. When CNC equipment uploaded its first YouTube video in October of 2012, there was little indication it would become one of the most trusted educational channels in the heavy equipment world. There was no professional film crew, no elaborate production schedule, and no carefully crafted marketing campaign. Clinton simply pointed a camera at the work already happening in his Indiana shop. At a time when most equipment dealers relied on glossy brochures and polished advertisements, he invited strangers to look behind the curtain, showing machines exactly as they arrived. Rust, dents, leaks, broken parts, and all. Instead of quick highlights designed to capture attention in a few seconds, many videos stretched beyond 40 minutes, sometimes approaching an hour. Viewers followed Clinton through muddy auction yards, climbed inside neglected bulldozers, inspected excavators with thousands of operating hours, and watched engines come apart bolt by bolt. Every inspection felt less like a sales pitch and more like an investigation. Small clues, maybe a fresh coat of paint hiding corrosion, excessive movement in a bucket pin, hydraulic cylinders weeping oil, or mismatched welds on a frame, often revealed stories that previous owners would rather keep hidden. To experienced operators, these were warning signs that could mean the difference between a profitable purchase and a financial disaster. That willingness to criticize equipment openly became one of the channel's defining characteristics. Clinton regularly pointed out cracked frames, damaged undercarriages, worn pivot points, leaking final drives, poor weld repairs, and engines showing signs of neglect. Sometimes he walked away from auction machines entirely, explaining in detail why they simply weren't worth buying. Viewers quickly realized something unusual was happening. Clinton wasn't trying to convince them that every machine was a bargain. He was teaching them how to think like an experienced buyer. Even when CNC had inventory available for sale, his advice often remained the same. If the numbers don't make sense, walk away. That philosophy extended well beyond the equipment itself. As internet marketplaces expanded during the 2010s, buying heavy machinery online became increasingly common. But so did fraud. Criminals began creating convincing dealer websites, copying photographs from legitimate auction companies, stealing equipment listings, and advertising machines they never owned. Buyers, sometimes located hundreds or even thousands of miles away, were persuaded to wire large deposits. Once they did, they discovered that the equipment simply didn't exist. The losses could reach tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. The problem became so widespread that organizations including the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, the National Equipment Register, and major auction companies repeatedly warned buyers about sophisticated online scams targeting construction equipment. Clinton brought those schemes into the open. Video after video dissected fake dealer websites, suspicious pricing, copied photographs, fabricated inspection reports, and pressure tactics designed to rush buyers into wiring money. He encouraged viewers to verify physical addresses, inspect equipment whenever possible, request serial numbers, and independently confirm ownership before sending payment. Some videos even demonstrated how stolen photographs were reused across multiple fraudulent listings under different company names. Ironically, by teaching people how to avoid dishonest dealers, Clinton also made it easier for viewers to evaluate legitimate ones, including his own company. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of CNC's success is that very little of it depended on traditional marketing. The videos rarely followed the formula of influencer culture. There were no exaggerated reactions, manufactured conflicts, or promises that every machine was extraordinary. Instead, viewers tuned in because they expected honesty, even when the truth wasn't flattering. Over time, something unexpected happened. Building instead of replacing at a time when much of manufacturing was moving overseas and modern equipment was becoming harder to repair, CNC doubled down on rebuilding what already existed. That decision sounds simple, but it ran against decades of change across the heavy equipment industry. Beginning in the late 1990s and accelerating through the 2000s, manufacturers invested heavily in cleaner diesel engines, onboard computers, electronic controls, and sophisticated emission systems designed to meet increasingly strict environmental regulations. Machines became quieter, more efficient, and more powerful. They also became significantly more complicated. In fact, they became so complicated that if they ever ran into trouble, only the makers could resolve the issues. CNC entered the arena with a completely different angle. Why replace a machine that can still be rebuilt? CNC equipment specializes in giving machines a second life. Equipment arrives from auctions, construction fleets, government surplus sales, and private owners. They are then disassembled, inspected, repaired, modified, and upgraded inside the company's Indiana facility. Welding, fabrication, machining, hydraulic repairs, and custom steel work all become part of the process. Rather than treating every project as identical, Clinton Chitwood approaches each machine as a unique engineering problem waiting to be solved. One of the shop's most valuable tools isn't a massive excavator or an expensive crane. It's a CNC plasma cutting table capable of producing precise steel components from raw plate. Combined with welding equipment and fabrication machinery, it allows the team to manufacture brackets, structural reinforcements, mounting systems, and replacement components that may no longer be commercially available. That flexibility becomes especially important when working on older military trucks or discontinued construction equipment, where replacement parts can be scarce or prohibitively expensive. The company also keeps as much of the work in-house as possible because quality is easier to control when the people doing the work are only a few steps away. That approach became particularly visible through the company's military truck conversions. Former Army cargo trucks that once hauled supplies across rough terrain were transformed into practical civilian work vehicles through extensive customization. Crew cab conversions created additional seating. Air ride suspension systems improved comfort. Custom steering configurations increased maneuverability. One-off fabrication projects solved challenges unique to individual customers. None of these upgrades came from factory option lists. They were engineered inside the shop, often requiring careful measurement, cutting, welding, and countless hours of trial and refinement. The finished trucks retained the rugged durability that made them valuable in military service while becoming far more practical for contractors, ranchers, municipalities, and buyers operating in remote regions around the world. Meanwhile, the broader heavy equipment industry was heading in the opposite direction. Modern machines increasingly relied on electronic control modules, proprietary diagnostic software, advanced sensors, selective catalytic reduction systems, diesel particulate filters, and complex emissions technology introduced to comply with environmental standards such as the United States Environmental Protection Agency's Tier 4 regulations. These innovations delivered cleaner exhaust emissions and improved efficiency, but they also changed the ownership experience. Diagnosing a modern engine often required specialized software, dealer-authorized service tools, and trained technicians. That shift helped fuel the growing right-to-repair debate. Farmers, independent mechanics, and equipment owners argued that purchasing a machine should include the practical ability to maintain and repair it. Manufacturers responded that restricting access protected safety systems, emissions compliance, cybersecurity, and valuable intellectual property. The disagreement eventually reached lawmakers, regulators, and the courts. In the United States, John Deere became one of the most prominent companies associated with the controversy, culminating in legal challenges and agreements expanding repair access after years of public criticism. CNC Equipment's decisions naturally align with the movement's central idea. He consistently recommends equipment that owners can understand with ordinary tools, mechanical knowledge, and experience. Clinton rarely argues that modern technology is inherently bad. Instead, he repeatedly asks whether complexity actually serves the customer. If an older machine can be repaired in the field with common tools while a newer one sits idle waiting for specialized diagnostics, which one is truly more valuable? We'll let you answer this question, but for now, let's get some context on why this debate actually matters.